Welcome to OhSister, where I unpack my Mormon sister missionary journals 10 years later. So, here I am, I'm a trainer, I'm training a new missionary, and it's such a big deal. So I want to jump right into what it means to be a trainer and some of what the training was like. I'm going to start by reading the letter that I received from my mission president when I was assigned to be a trainer. So here is what it says. It says 15 May 2015, and it does have the church's official letterhead, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with even their, like the same font and the right color and everything. And then the letter reads, Dear Sister Finlinson, you are assigned to be a trainer. This is both a privilege and a significant responsibility. It is assumed you have ingrained in your soul a love of the Savior. I feel your missionary skills are such that you are comfortable working with members, finding investigators, and teaching the gospel. Perhaps most importantly, your work ethic and obedience are above reproach. Through personal and companion study, your grasp of the scriptures will increase daily. Please understand that Sister Snow is young and very impressionable. Your habits will become her habits. Your attitude will become her. The seeds you plant in her heart will flourish and become missionary characteristics. Your companion received an orientation packet on the day of arrival. Please review all the contents with your companion and train on the items enclosed because this will be the only in-depth training your companion will receive on them. While convert baptisms are important, we must not lose track of the fact that we must bring ourselves to Christ before we can bring others to Him. As you and your companion come to Christ, you will set a foundation. That foundation will help you overcome discouragement and achieve your goals. Sister Allen and I love you, and we stand ready to help. We pray for your success daily. Sincerely, then, signature of President Allen, etc., etc. So, real quick, I want to point out that when I got this letter, it was, wonderful, felt very special and personal. And reading through it now later, I'm like, oh, this was obviously a formulaic email that it was an actual letter, but they obviously kept this as a document and just substituted in the new missionaries' names to print it out because they just don't have time to write this letter for everyone, right? It was, this is the letter. And it's kind of funny because in the formatting of my letter, it says, Dear Sister Finlinson, and then there's a space before the comma. So it's the thing that copy and pasted and entered my name in, there was a space. So you can kind of see how it was not individually typed, but it was mass produced, right? A lot of kind of wild things in here, they're obviously you love the Savior, you're a good missionary, but most importantly, you work hard and you're obedient above reproach. Wow, that's the most important thing, is to be obedient. And of course, there's this promise that my habits will become her habits and my attitude will become her. Maybe that's meant to say my attitude will become her attitude, but it's literally the role I'm in here is, it's I'm like a parent. Please understand Sister Snow is young and very impressionable. She was probably not that much younger than I was. We were almost the same age, but the age that you are on your mission is just wildly exaggerated, and being out for a few transfers is we would say that it made such a difference. And there was different experience and different things that we had to do like teaching lessons and stuff, but we were all still the same age basically, so that's kind of wild to like be placing me in such an authority figure over her and giving me so much responsibility for how she is going to be a missionary, and it goes both ways too. They're really supposed to look up to their trainer. Also, I wanted to point out from the letter that it says we must bring ourselves to Christ before we can bring others to him. So they're like, yeah, we need you to focus on convert baptisms, but you have to first focus on yourself and on your companion, because if you two aren't in line and if you two aren't close to Christ, then you're not going to be able to get anyone else close to Christ. So there's this kind of convenient controlling tactic of like, if you are unsuccessful as a missionary in converting other people and bringing them to the church, getting them to get baptized, well, the thing you can work on is you're not enough like Christ yourself. So you need to be more compulsive and obsessive about the ways that you show Christ that you love him and you are close to him. And that will make it so that you're a more successful missionary. But I could talk about that forever, so we're going to keep going. So in 2011, the church released a training plan that was fully integrated with their like missionary training center training and with Preach My Gospel, as they were releasing the new Preach My Gospel manual, and they were like, it's the whole Preach My Gospel system. And I found a church news article that they released in August of 2011. So of course, all the links are in the description, but this was written by Heather Whittle Wrigley, titled New Missionary Infield Training Extends MTC Experience. I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from the article. It says, Richard Heaton, director of the Provo MTC, explained that the new infield training is not new programming, but rather an extension of the training missionaries receive in the MTC. The first 12 weeks manual points trainers and their new missionary, and this is what he says, the MTC director at the time. The first 12 weeks manual points trainers and their new missionary companions to the resources in Preach My Gospel that they most need in their first 12 weeks, he said. It's a roadmap to show how to get up to speed and become fully functional as servants of the Lord as rapidly as possible. So that's what the mission president said about this. And then there's a last explanation. Mission presidents are to begin implementing the in-field training for new mission materials, which includes 3 training documents and new companion study video segments almost immediately. Okay, so there's they have like a whole announcement explaining it. Everybody gives their little testimonials of how great it is and how it's going to make people more effective and bring more souls to Christ as more rapidly, right? And there is definitely, I can see why they would be like, okay, the whole Preach My Gospel manual is really big and potentially, verifiably overwhelming for new missionaries. So they're like, let's boil it down to what's the stuff they need to focus on at first. So looking at these materials as we go forward, it's a really actually helpful way for what are some of the like high pressure sales technique trainings that they want to like really push into the beginning of new missionaries training, so that they're really good at the like committing and kind of like, they call it supporting and stuff, but like really pushing people into doing what we tell them to. Yeah. And of course, just everything needs to be done as rapidly as possible, right? Because it's always a rush. In fact, in part of my sort of deconstruction of Mormonism and all the cultural things that came with it, especially from being a missionary, I have found resources about complex PTSD to be very helpful. And there's a book called CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And in that book, I think it's in that book. This is just like in my head. So I'm not looking it up, but I think this is where it's from. He has this really helpful quote that is helpful to remind yourself regularly. And the quote is, "This is not an emergency. I do not need to rush," right? And there's a lot of, if someone has passed like trauma, complex trauma from being in a high pressure group like this, or, there are very many reasons why you would have complex trauma, but it's common for people to be controlled and emotionally, mentally unhealthy because they always feel like everything is an emergency and they need to rush, which keeps your body in the like fight, flight, panic state. Like you can't rest. You don't have time to think and like be like, wait, am I actually happy? Am I actually doing what I want with my life? No, you just are like running, doing what the church or the group or whatever tells you. So it's very telling that there is always this focus on doing things as fast as possible and saying how precious time is, not because it's important to let yourself rest and do things that are good for you, but because you need to work super hard, right? So now I want to dive into what the training actually looked like. And as I was looking for the training materials I've used so far in the podcast, I usually have a pretty easy time finding them, like the Preach My Gospel or like missionary schedule, or all these things that I talk about, and I want to, either if I don't have it still myself or if I want you to be able to find it, I usually can find it on the church's official website or like from other faithful members' blogs at the time. But weirdly, these were really hard to find, and after some kind of really specific digging, I was able to find this specific training manual because somebody on Reddit posted a link from the Internet Wayback Machine, and the post was from 6 years ago. So the post is from 6 years ago, and then I don't know when the church took down access to normal people being able to access these church training materials. I don't know, but I don't know why the church wants to scrub this from their history so much, although I don't know how they're training new missionaries now, so maybe the old stuff is already aged into embarrassment. I do know the context of the Reddit post where I was able to find this was where the church was saying, oh yeah, actually, we don't want people to commit investigators to be baptized really fast. Like they should wait until it feels right, and we don't know why missionaries were doing that. It's like so silly and clearly not right. When actually in the training materials here, they're specifically telling us to commit someone on the first lesson to be baptized, or to invite them, and hopefully by the second lesson to find a specific date, and we're like graded on how well or not we're doing that. So, potentially an embarrassing or even worse conflict for the church to have all of these conflicting things that are officially theirs. I can only hypothesize, of course. I don't really know why they take things like this down. Regardless, I did find it, and I'm linking it for you as well. So here's a taste of what the introduction for the new missionary reads, and the official title of this is In-Field Training for New Missionaries, as opposed to Missionary Training Center training, so now you're in the field. And subheading, the first 12 weeks for new missionaries and trainers. Okay, so page 1 of the introduction for the new missionary, here's mostly what it says. Quote, "Your experience in the Missionary Training Center was designed to help you learn your purpose as a missionary and how to prepare and teach investigators by the Spirit, according to their interests and needs. Your purpose for the rest of your mission is to follow the promptings of the Spirit as you invite an increasing number of people to, and then they quote, preach my gospel, they quote the missionary purpose, to come unto Christ by helping them receive the restored gospel through faith in Jesus Christ and his atonement, repentance, baptism, receiving the gift of the Holy Ghost, and enduring to the end. And then it says, strive to become the kind of missionary who could, if called upon, train a new missionary by the end of your first 12 weeks in the mission field. To accomplish this objective, follow these principles. Be obedient to mission rules and the direction contained in the missionary handbook. Love, serve, and listen to your companion. And eagerly participate as a fully contributing member of your companionship. Okay, so it's pretty clear what they want out of this and out of the new missionary who's getting their training done. I did think it was alarming and telling that they put in the very introduction to the new missionaries, they put this pressure on them. They say you should strive to become the kind of missionary who could, if called upon, train a new missionary by the end of your first 12 weeks in the mission field. And that just seems like they're like kind of from the very beginning giving you extra pressure and extra heat to make it feel really serious and to make you really double down. And I remember when I was doing this myself, when I was getting my training, it was really intense. I was really stressed out. I wanted to do a really good job and I was worried I wouldn't. And I was like, okay, the bar is really high. So I feel like that's not necessarily a healthy thing to put in here. Because there's just already so much stress and internal pressure put on you when you're a new missionary. So having them put external pressure on you that you need to be a fully formed like senior companion after just 12 weeks it's too much. And also that they're like, make sure above all else you're obedient to the rules, you love and listen to your companion, and you eagerly participate, right? So a lot about the way that your emotional state needs to be, and yeah, you need to not only listen to your companion but love them, like as though that's something you can choose. I feel like that in worst case scenarios is training someone to learn to tolerate an abusive relationship because the power is not in the individual to be like, oh, I don't like this relationship, I can leave. No, you're stuck in the relationship, and the power in the individual is, at least here, said that, oh, well, you could just love them, and you just stick with it, you stick with your companion, you stick in this relationship, and just love them, and then it will be good, right? Just be obedient and love your companion. So there are obviously situations where that gets bad. So continuing forward, it does clarify how the training's supposed to work. They say on page 2, you and your companion have been given an additional 60 minutes of companion study each day for the first 12 weeks of training. This study will occur at a time that will be determined by your mission president. And I just had to point this out because it was funny to me that they say you've been given an additional 60 minutes of study, because it's ridiculous to on an outside view, perhaps, to say that any adults could be given an additional 60 minutes to do something in their day that's been fully scheduled by someone else, and say, oh, well, here's something else for you to do. Like, that's given. It's not the correct operative. It should really be a different word. It should probably be assigned, but it's like using the word given is like, oh, here's this great gift from your benevolent leaders, and it's like, that feels weird to me. And then of course they also immediately say this study will occur at a time that will be determined by your mission president. So it's like, sure, we'll give you the gift of an extra hour to do this training, but you can't even decide when to do it. That can't even be left up to you. Like, your mission president will tell you, you know? Seems really infantilizing and just furthering the lack of control and autonomy. And also, I wanted to point out the section here about accountability to the mission president and to the Lord, also on page 2. So here's what it says. In your weekly letter and in regularly scheduled interviews with your mission president, it is essential that you report what you are learning. You should also report how what you are learning is helping you to accomplish your purpose. This is how your mission president will know how best to help you. Also, and then they quote, preach my gospel, in your prayers at night, give the Lord an accounting of your day's activities. And I just thought, you know, funny, but also kind of red flag, because in the White Handbook, there's emphasis that our loyalty is first to the Lord, then to the mission president, then to your companion. There's just a lot of like hierarchy and who do you obey and that, right? And of course, so they have to say you got to be accountable to the mission president and to the Lord. And they say it's essential that you report what you are learning. That feels a little bit that feels like past the boundary of what is an okay thing to ask of people who are not only volunteering to give you 24-hour control of their day for 18 months to 24 months of their life, like saying that it's essential that you report what you are learning is just really, it feels really controlling to me from this perspective 10 years later. And then I also thought it was similarly kind of funny that they say all this stuff about how you report to the mission president, and they're like, oh, also you should also like pray to the Lord. But it's so like, oh yeah, also do this is important. But it really kind of shows the church's priorities with maintaining their hierarchical church structure control, and like, okay, yeah, in theory this is all about the Lord, but like really it's like, yeah, sure, you can pray and stuff, but everything's really about the church system. And I wanted to finish this section by reading to you the Check Your Progress material. So they have this standardized personal grading chart for the new missionary, and they're supposed to go through it with their trainer on weeks 4, 8, and 12. And they have different areas of progress that are key principles from the main chapters in Preach My Gospel that this program focuses on. And the instructions for the new missionary say, using the key below, read each statement and circle the number that is true of you. So the key lists numbers 1 through 5, with 1 as never, 2 sometimes, 3 often, 4 almost always, and 5 of course as always. And of course the goal, although they don't say it, but you can tell, is to get to a 5 on every area. So I want to include this because I could see an argument where grading yourself on some things could be helpful regularly, but the stuff that they include, a lot of it is unhealthy stuff to grade, and even things that are literally out of your control and it's up to someone else. And if you're trying to get it to be a 5, you're gonna either be just not getting other people to do stuff because they're autonomous beings and feeling bad and guilty because you're not being a good enough missionary, or you are learning how to manipulate and abuse authority and trick and control other people to do stuff because you need a good grade, which is just bad, but that's really the emphasis of what this training is all about. So I want to read just a few of these sentences, areas that new missionaries are grading themselves on. Remember, these are like 1 to 5, 1 never, 5 always. Okay. I feel genuine love for those I teach. I invite my investigators to make 1 or more commitments as part of each visit. I invite my investigators to be baptized in the first lesson. I invite my investigators no later than in the second lesson to be baptized on a specific date. I feel the presence of the Holy Ghost in my life. I try to discern my investigators' needs. I try to notice spiritual impressions and ideas that come into my mind and heart as I teach. My investigators know the Holy Ghost how the Holy Ghost operates so that they can recognize answers to prayers. My investigators read from the Book of Mormon between teaching visits. If my investigators do not complete reading assignments, my companion and I read with them. My investigators attend church. When I teach, I follow a lesson plan that was created according to the needs of my investigators. I change what I teach according to impressions from the Holy Ghost. I am comfortable with silence as I teach. I am bold and loving when extending commitments. I help others to make commitments out of a desire to draw closer to the Lord, not out of obligation to me. So yeah, you can imagine reading these as a new missionary. Obviously, many of these are out of your control, like whether or not your investigators are reading or going to church, right? And then a lot of them are things that are also out of your control, not because it's up to someone else, but because it's literally about like your naturally fluctuating human state. Like, I feel the presence of the Holy Ghost in my life, or I am comfortable with silence as I teach, or I feel genuine love for those I teach, right? It's like, so a few of these are things that you can actually actionably do and like get to a 5 reliably, but a lot of these are just like, you actually have no control over this, and it feels really abusive and controlling and manipulative and bad and kind of tearing you down to make new missionaries who are stripped away from their friends and family, and they're just not even called their own name anymore, right? OhSister Finlinson. You're just, and everything's out of your control, and then here you are regularly grading yourself on, do I feel love for those that I teach, right? Not cool. So there's your little taste of what the 12-week training program is like for new missionaries. I've been having a great time working on this project, and it takes a lot of time every week to keep this up. If you have the desire and the means to support me financially, your donations are really effective at communicating to me how this is valuable for you, and it really helps a lot. Of course, I do have the disclaimer that your donations will not bring eternal salvation for you or anyone else. There are links in the description where you can make a one-time donation, or you can sign up to be one of my monthly patrons to support this and my other creative work. Thank you. Let's get back to it. Monday, May 18th, 2015. Mission Day 220. It's so nice to have a normal scheduled P-Day again. Smiley face. Sister Snow is a doer. She gets things done without waiting. Apparently, she was packed 3 weeks before coming out. It's really nice to work with her. Fortunately, she's patient with my more natural disorder. although it's still clean. And she allows me to insert clips of wisdom that hopefully aren't annoying, because we've all been there. Our lesson with Marvin today was awesome. He felt the Spirit. He asked if he could be baptized. Sister Snow did a great job teaching from Matthew 11:28-30, which was an inspired switch made during companionship study, about how the gospel gives us peace and direction. And she invited him to be baptized, and he said yes. And he knows when he feels the Spirit, which is awesome. Interesting day then. I guess all the craziness of the previous transfer is over, and we finally get to have normal P days again, so I was happy about that. Talking about Sister Snow being a doer, so basically she didn't seem, the best way I can explain it is it doesn't seem like she had ADHD, where like I didn't know that I did, but she was able to just kind of like, okay, this thing needs to be done, so I'm just going to do it now. And I was very impressed with that. Although it looks like I was a little bit defensive, like, okay, well, it's still clean in our apartment. I'm just not like crazy tidying immediately after anything has been, done, right? Also, it seems like I was a little bit feeling insecure about being in charge and supposed to be telling her stuff. So yeah, that's definitely going to be an awkward situation, right? Being another 19-year-old's trainer, right? That's just kind of weird. But anyway, also Marvin asked if he could be baptized, which was very exciting. Typically does not happen. And so of course, we talked about how the gospel gives you peace and direction, and Sister Snow invited him to be baptized. He said yes. Basically, this is all very in line with sort of the training stuff and the fourth missionary stuff I talked about last week, where we teach people that all of the insecurity and instability of just kind of being alive and having to cope with making decisions that could maybe go poorly and not really knowing what's in store, like the church claims to give you relief from that, and if you fully commit to it, you do in a sense get relief. You do get a sense of like giving up your control and giving it to God and feeling peace and direction, because you don't have to choose what you're going to do. You just do what God says or what the church says. But in reality, actually, that doesn't protect you from just crazy stuff happening, and also it doesn't deeply fulfill your individual authentic needs. So perhaps there's a person out there who would just naturally do absolutely everything that the church tells them to do, but I find it unlikely that most people would be naturally doing everything that the church tells you to do if it was up to them, and if it was up to what really feels best to their own experience. So, pros and cons, right? Peace and direction, but losing connection to yourself and losing like real meaningful exploration of the self, right? Let's keep going. Tuesday, May 19th, 2015, mission day 221. Today was pretty cool. It's been moody weather, kind of since it snowed on Mother's Day. Today it was cloudy and we wore our coats, and it's supposed to snow tomorrow morning. Sister Snow got a pretty stark, unapologetic first impression of Spearfish. We're crazy and there's a lot of drama and we love everyone, and the Stockmans feed us every Tuesday dinner. She got to meet with Brent Mitzi, Hazel and Gina, Marvin again, and then we had supper. I really enjoyed 12-week today. To teach the why of how to begin teaching, I had us do a role play. She was to answer the door, and I'd be some salesperson, winky face. I knocked on the door, she opened. I'd introduced myself and asked if I could teach her, while nodding yes. She let me in, and I started testifying that Jesus Christ is our Savior, and right then I had us pause to check her stage of bewilderment. I asked her what her character was feeling right then, and she said she didn't know who I was or why I was there. Exactly. So I then explained that we have How to Begin Teaching, or HTBT, to set the expectations of why we're there so they can recognize us as representatives of Jesus Christ. So much fun. I love training. She went to bed right quick because she's been getting a cold. I really don't want her to get sick. Sister Johnson warned me about this when I'm training. Plus, guess what? When I was showing Sister Snow my first journal, she recognized Sister Elliot's picture. She was at her homecoming. The homecoming of her mission grandmother. Pretty crazy, eh? Wow. Cool. Okay, so first of all, yes, of course, Sister Snow's starting to get sick, and it's interesting that I was even warned about this by Sister Johnson, my second trainer, because honestly, if we recall, I was sick at the beginning of my mission. I was sick when I got to the MTC, and it stayed with me until, I was sick for a while of my first transfer. And it just makes sense that with all of the combination of all the traveling, the really intense overworking, and the less sleep, and just you aren't in control of your schedule, so you're like, oh well, my body's tired, I'm tired, but I can't do anything about it. I have to do the whole MPC schedule, and then you get out and you're like, well, I can't rest, I have to do the whole schedule, I'm training, I'm supposed to do all the stuff I'm supposed to learn, I can't stop. So it makes sense that probably most missionaries are sick the first while. That's not great, but it makes sense. I also, it's interesting that I wrote in an example of what it was like to do the 12-week training. I think I made up this, or I don't think I practiced this with my trainers, but I honestly don't remember. But this was kind of fun to read and to see there can be a tendency for new missionaries to just immediately want to not even explain what's going on when they talk to people, just be like, do you believe in Jesus? Do you want to get baptized? Because it's so drilled into us to just be excited and get people to get baptized and love Jesus and stuff. So I thought it was kind of clever the way that I set this up to show an instance of a missionary being kind of too aggressive and not even explaining what they were talking about. But the thing that really made me kind of smile when I was reading this was I set this up as being a salesperson and knocking on the door, and then being a pushy salesperson who's getting in and trying to sell something. And I wrote in there that it was a winky face. I thought it was a good joke, but I didn't. And I knew the comparison. I knew that return missionaries were really good salespeople and stuff, but because I was so convinced that it's it's okay that we're kind of like salespeople, because this is the truth and this is the most important message, and these people need this to be saved. So haha, we can joke that we're salespeople, but really we're not. We're if we're salespeople, we're the most important salespeople, because we're God's people, right? But now just looking back, I'm no, literally it's the same thing. But anyway, and also I wanted to talk about how I said Sister Snow got a really unapologetic first impression of spearfish. So I guess it was our first time really being in the spearfish area and meeting people, and the way that I described it in here was that Spearfish is very crazy. There's a lot of drama. We love everyone, and the Stockmans feed us every Tuesday dinner. And I it's kind of hard for me to explain this. I was not even sure if I wasn't sure if I should even edit this at all or just put it straight out the way that I wrote it, and I decided to put it straight. But I guess there's just it's like the mixture of a small town plus a lot of people are like retired or they're older, or they're kind of, at least the people we were interacting with were like dependent on government support, or like they were veterans. There were a lot of veterans there. So it's just kind of like the population itself was a different vibe, and also there are a lot of like biker kind of people, which in reality I think that this town was probably not as strange as it felt. It was just quite different from what I was used to in Utah before this, but it just felt really different. There was also lots of drama. I think a better word really than drama could be, there were a lot of the people that we were interacting with, whether they were members of the church or not, but particularly a lot of the members of the church were involved in really toxic, dysfunctional relationships and family dynamics. So when we would get involved with them, the missionary dynamic was also kind of like enmeshed and unhealthy. So that just all mixed together to result in a lot of unhealthy dynamics. And I interpreted it as, that's just really dramatic here, not really seeing more of the full picture of the difficulty of actually, with inherent to just being a human, it's very possible that there's some sort of like generational trauma going on, and like weird family dynamics are getting passed around. And then also if you add in the layer of like Mormonism and being Mormon in an area where not everybody else is Mormon, there's kind of like the complex of feeling like you're told you're special and you're different from everyone, and it can kind of feel weird to interact with that. And also there's a lot of stuff that the church teaches. There's a lot of kind of built-in misogyny, patriarchy, racism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, just all these things that can pile on to making one individual, no matter who they are, have difficulties. And then if that stuff is all going in within their family system, that can make it really messy and complicated. And then, of course, I said, and also we love everyone, and we really like the branch president's family. So it was like, it was basically like, this is a kind of, yeah, sure, maybe this place is a little bit, has like some toxic stuff going on, or some like maybe unhealthy dynamics going on, but instead of seeing that as maybe a red flag for, is this a good place for me to be at this point in my life? It was like, no, this is fun, and it's our job to fix it, right? Just teaching young people to tolerate abuse and bad dynamics, and perhaps even seek it out, because we believed we could fix it, right? And if you love someone, then you're going to stick with them and make them better, even if they explicitly tell you that's not what they want. Okay. Wednesday, May 20th, 2015, Mission Day 222. Well, today was just awesome. I'm realizing that the most effective journaling won't really allow writing everything we did today, just because so much keeps happening. So, some highlights. We finally got our area vision done this morning, just in time for area call. It's so nice to have a plan. We both feel so much better now. Also, Elder Buell will be a good district leader for this transfer. Good at getting things done and good at praise. He even shared Proverbs 29:13 about the importance of having a vision. Smiley face. This morning, Sister Snow was super slow waking up, and she went to bed as fast as possible. She's been having cold symptoms, and she refuses to let herself rest. I worry about her. We had our first lesson with Tanya and Andy and Heidi today. They live in Pine Ridge, so we were a little late due to not knowing how to navigate. It was interesting to be senior companion in this situation. For some reason, how to begin teaching and the restoration were always super scary. It didn't flow super well, but we got to know their background, and we're going to help Heidi move out next week. Sister Snow was super frustrated at herself for not knowing everything. I so remember that. Okay, we'll go backwards. With teaching a lesson with new people that we were a little bit late to, and Sister Snow had a hard time, and apparently I did too, but I was a little more skilled in going through the points than I had been before. The thing that I really wanted to point out that I wrote, for some reason, this first lesson was always really scary, like before, and it was weird looking back as a senior companion, and it's like, could I really not see why it's scary? Because to me it seems pretty obvious that, of course, the first time you meet with someone at all, it's a little bit vulnerable and scary, and then if you add on the fact that you're like a missionary, you're going out evangelizing, like it's weird to meet with someone and be like, are they even going to listen to us? Are they going to like us? Like, what are they like, and like, we just don't know them at all. So of course it was scary. And also the how to begin teaching and teaching the restoration lesson were basically us setting the expectations for how our lessons were supposed to go and our meetings with these people were supposed to go. And then we would start sort of dropping all of the big, well, not all, but, kind of the big, kind of weird doctrine that made us so different from other Christians. And, I think at the back of my mind, I could tell, that this felt kind of weird, and, I didn't want people to think it was, culty and strange, or maybe not culty, but, occult, And also, there was always just, every interaction we had with people, we were hoping for them to eventually get baptized, and we were counting everything and hoping for them to progress and get deeper and deeper into the group and commit and raise up our numbers. We wanted to have people we taught lessons to. We wanted to have people who we prayed with. We wanted to have people who were doing the stuff that we asked them, right? So it was like, oh man, a lot hinges on whether or not we tell them what our interactions are supposed to be like, and are they going to listen, Yeah, that is actually, it is quite understandable looking back on why it felt so scary to teach that first lesson. Then, of course, Sister Snow is continuing to be sick, and she had a hard time waking up, and as soon as we got home and finished all of our planning and stuff, she just went to bed as fast as she could. And it's weird seeing how this mirrors when I was a new missionary, so here I'm the trainer, I'm the senior companion, and I'm writing in my journal about how she's getting sick, and I write, she refuses to let herself rest, and I worry about her. And I remember reading just, maybe 30 weeks back, where Sister Elliot and Sister Johnson, but especially Sister Elliot, were worried about me being sick. And then I think I got sick again when I was with Sister Johnson. And they wanted me to rest, and I wouldn't let myself rest. And they were worried about me because I guess as the senior companion, when you're not in the middle of being brand new and being under the pressure of training and figuring stuff out, you can see that there's a little bit more like, okay, big picture, maybe 18 months isn't forever, but it's quite a bit of time. And if you let yourself rest for a week or two, if you're sick, then you'll be much better off long term. But when you're brand new missionary, or even just when you are so concerned with being obedient and working hard, which I was, and it seems Sister Snow was too, then every day feels like the stakes are incredibly high, and the loss of one day of taking a day off to rest, or even a few hours to rest, is just inconceivably too much of a loss. Like, oh no, I cannot rest. Imagine the people who could lose their salvation because I'm taking a nap when I'm told I know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm supposed to be out there working, right? So it's interesting kind of seeing how I was able to see that, and yet I still held that double standard for myself, right? Like if I got sick, I wouldn't have wanted to rest by this point, I don't think. I mean, I guess we'll see what I do next time I get sick, which I'm sure will happen. Okay, let's keep going. Thursday, May 21st, 2015, Mission Day 223. This morning, after coming back from Sister Snow's first shift at the parrot place, a cockatoo bit her finger, it smelled gross, and we were dirty. She was not impressed. I checked the mail and found the first letter from Mom and Co. since 2 transfers ago in Scranton, smiley face. It was my activated credit card and all the stickers I'd bought for the mission. Not exactly what I'd expected, but still pretty cool. So we were supposed to have all day for weekly planning, but we started with parrots, got ready, met with Bonnie, dashed to Spearfish for sheet music, had lunch with Sister Lyman and Shaylin, and got back at 2 o'clock. After we'd finished our studies, it was 4 o'clock, and right then Nicole Rollins called. Yesterday she'd let us know she was coming here from Utah for her LDS aunt's delayed funeral. And we said we could help with music. Thus, we drove to Spearfish to pick it up when we got a moment today. So she called and talked for a half hour. And I arranged to do a musical number with Patty Rollins, a BYU vocal performance graduate. So we had half an hour to organize our to-do lists and prepare for ward coordination. Then we had dinner, our meeting. I practiced the song for half an hour. We got back at 8:20 and we ended up with 40 minutes of weekly planning. Now we know what we're doing tomorrow, I guess, ... Today, after/during planning, we just got the giggle fits. Maybe Heavenly Father knows to loosen us up is to deal out crazy days. You know how last transfer I'd always think there was no way things would be crazier the next day? Well, it feels like that right now. Maybe weekly planning won't solve it. Maybe this just comes with having 2 areas. I'm eating a donut right now. That's how nuts this is. A stale one. As anyone would conclude, yes, Sister Snow went to bed right quick. Tomorrow should be fun. Okie dokie. So yeah, I can't remember if I've even fully explained why we kept going to this like parrot place to clean up. It was like whoever the previous missionaries were in the Custer area before us, and I think it was elders, they had set up regularly volunteering to help this like bird sanctuary kind of place that I don't know if they specifically collected birds or if they just took care of birds of people who like couldn't hold on to them anymore for whatever reason, because a lot of birds like parrots can live for a super long time, etc. But so it was our Thursday morning that we were supposed to go over, and we would put on our service clothes and we would get all the help move the cages around and get all the newspaper full of bird droppings and spray stuff down, and it was pretty gross. And Sister Snow was bit by a cockatoo, which was not good. She was very much not impressed. But I can't remember if we ever canceled the service thing or if we just kept doing it. I would imagine we just keep doing it, but I guess we'll see. Also, it seems like I was a little disappointed that after a while, after 2 transfers of not getting like physical mail, I got like, or at least letters. I think I got packages, but my mom sent me a credit card and some stickers, and I was like, oh man, like I wanted a letter, but they sent me emails every week, so it wasn't like I wasn't hearing from them. I was just like surprised. And interesting that I didn't say in my journal that I was like, oh, I felt maybe, it was nice to get this, but I was a little disappointed. I didn't write that. I just wrote, oh, it wasn't what I expected, but it was still pretty cool. So, some more emotional censorship going on for sure. And I probably didn't even want to acknowledge to myself that when I opened the letter and it was, helpful things, but not a letter. And I was, kind of homesick and all that. Like, didn't want to acknowledge the feelings. Also, we'll talk about this more as in the next entry, but I was getting set up to help someone with music for a funeral, and I was very excited. And I specifically wrote that I was excited to do a musical number with, I think it was this woman's daughter, Patty. And I wrote down, wow, she went to BYU and she did voice performance, and that's the degree that I'm hoping to get into. So she's like living my dream, So I was really excited, and it felt like I was like, oh wow, I feel like this is just proof that I'm doing the right thing with my life, and after this I'm going to be doing the right thing, because look at God setting me up with opportunities to network with BYU voice people, and I get to sing at a funeral, and this is just the exact kind of like music service that I hope to get to do for the rest of my life. Like it felt like proof of God's approval, and for me to get this opportunity to sing at some random person's funeral. Which I guess now I can kind of see that it really just, I was so primed to need external validation and any way to feel like God was approving what I saw as my future and what I was kind of personally interested in, that any chance I got to like see something as proof from God, like I definitely took it. And I guess I'll also just say some more like food judgment, food shaming kind of. I don't know how we ended up with donuts, because I can't imagine we bought them. Probably someone gave them to us. Somehow we ended up with stale donuts, and we felt like we should accept them, and probably partially wanted them, but also felt bad about them. I can say that it's not all, I mean, a lot of it is weird, toxic food shaming stuff going on, but also specifically for donuts, for me, when I was a kid, I didn't like how they tasted for whatever reason. And it wasn't until I was in high school, in seminary, when we were like given donuts as a treat and I like begrudgingly ate one. I was like, wait a second, this tastes good now. What? This is so weird. So like, but I never was like specifically wanting a donut because I kind of still associated them as like not being my favorite thing, even if they tasted okay. So I think maybe that's part of what I was talking about. I was like, today is so crazy. I'm even eating a donut right now, and I don't even like particularly like them that much. But I think also a lot of it was, today's so crazy that I'm even breaking the rules of like not eating the most healthy food. I'm not only eating sugar, but I'm eating like fried sugar, and donuts feel like the epitome of like sinful bad food that I shouldn't be eating, or like I'll gain weight and all the stuff that I was being told was bad from every level, not just society at large, but specifically missionaries and specifically sister missionaries, right? Yeah. So just pointing out that was not great, and I'm not saying that I'm certainly no enlightened person, and I'm sure I still have weird stuff about food, but I do, and you know, it's okay if you have a complicated relationship with food, because how can anyone not have a complicated relation with food, right? But I am happy to report that I can now eat a donut, and it doesn't make me feel so full of shame that I have to confess in my journal that I wrote a donut and wasn't today weird, right? So I am grateful to have had a little bit more, I have a little bit more food freedom now than I did at that point. Yeah. Okay. Friday, May 22nd. I didn't write the year, but it was 2015 still. Mission day 224. We had the elders show us where the funeral home was. We followed them in our car, since they had a GPS. We were there at 9:15, beating everyone besides the staff. They let us in to practice. The home was pretty classy, if small. A reception area with fountains and couches and soft lighting, and a front display with a wooden cross, dark-colored fake plants, a side pulpit, and a display table holding Sister Cleveland's ashes. The light was red-toned and sleepy. It was pretty hard to feel the spirit. I got to practice with Patty Rollins a couple times before the service, and we chatted about music and missions. So, she graduated with a master's in vocal performance from BYU and served a mission in France. I asked her for music advice, and she said that unless you're positive you want to go into music, don't specialize in it, because now no one will hire her. Instead, get a minor or a double major. She actually studied with my same voice teacher before her mission. Since I was at the piano, I didn't get the chance to talk with anyone before or after the service. Thankfully, Sister Snow could give Nicole a hug when she was sad at the end. But the hired pastor stuck around to chat once everyone was gone. His name is Pastor Kurt Stone, and while his eulogy was sensational and dramatized and going off emotion, not the spirit, it was therapeutic and a good counseling, grieving tool. I guess when you're not called and ordained, it really is you, not the spirit, who comforts others. He asked us about teaching the word of wisdom, and I said it was about obeying God's revelation. He also hoped I'd keep up the music service after my mission, of course, to share and heal people's grief. He's pretty cool. We counted it as a contact for potential. Smiley face. That was Sister Snow's first ever funeral service. We didn't go to the grave dedication since it was outside of our mission. We went to Sister Luck's home afterwards for a drop-by lunch. They're always telling us to do that. It ended up being an inspired comfort visit, since she just had a bad scare with her cat getting sick. Thanks, Heavenly Father. Smiley face. The rest of our day, we were able to just stay home and steam out half of a weekly planning session. Poor Sister Snow is doing so well under the stress of training while learning and building up 2 areas. I'm constantly just amazed at her ability to get things done. Smiley face. She always says really cute planning prayers thanking Heavenly Father that I'm her trainer. Smiley face. During dinner, I sneaky wrote a letter to her parents to brag a little bit and make them proud. I have a lot to talk about this day. So let's start at the beginning. So just sort of a note about this point in time in the world and technology. So it was 2015. So at home, like I did have a smartphone, and it was starting to be normal for people to navigate with like Google Maps or whatever on their phones. But of course, we didn't bring our phones with us, and the church was, I think, in the next year or so, going to switch missionaries to having the missionary phone be a smartphone and having tablets and all that, but that transition hadn't happened yet. So we just had like flip phones or, slide phones or whatever, and no GPS in our phone. So I think at some point I had my parents send me like a car GPS, because it kept being a problem that we weren't able to find new addresses. Because, also we couldn't like go online and look up directions, which is like what people would do before they had a GPS, but there was internet, right? And we didn't have like an atlas or anything, so the elders had a GPS, so sometimes if we had to go somewhere, then we would have to follow them in their car and they would drive there, which just feels like a really interesting piece of history maybe, and also it kind of shows how sometimes the really strict missionary rules could create really big impracticalities that we had to deal with. But of course, a really big point from this day was the emphasis on the funeral service, and how I was just so determined to not feel the spirit there. And everything that was different from an LDS church building or a normal LDS funeral, or, stuff done by the way that the church says it's supposed to be with like a bishop and everything, like everything that was different from how I was used to things being done in Utah, at a Mormon funeral in Utah, in a church building in Utah. It all seemed not only different, but bad. And I wrote, it was really hard. It was hard to feel the spirit. And let me explain what I was implying here. I pointed out that at the front of the display at the funeral home, there was a wooden cross, which at this point in church church culture overall, there was an understanding that crosses were bad and they didn't invite the spirit, and they kind of focus on like Jesus's suffering. Of course, it's interesting now because the church has within like the last year kind of been trying to transition into like mainstream Protestantism Christianity or something like that, and they've been saying like, oh, we don't want to use our own specific terminology, like calling each other members and non-members and investigators and like the very Mormon specific church words. And they've also been saying like, yeah, it's okay to have crosses are okay. I don't think they're putting crosses in church buildings yet. Maybe they are. But like I've been hearing about people are seeing active LDS people wearing a cross, and it's like it's no longer weird and something that would get you in trouble with your young women leaders, but now it's like, oh look, what a wonderful faithful person, right? So that's really interesting how in my very faithful, extremely Orthodox missionary journal stuff, I'm writing that there's a wooden cross on display at this funeral home, and it's making it hard to feel the spirit. Also, the other things that were problems were that there were fake plants, but they were dark colored. So I was like, ooh, that's kind of gloomy, kind of satanic. Why are they not? Why are they not light colored? Yeah, this is not good, right? Sister Cleveland had ashes there instead of her properly. I had been to lots of funerals at this point. It's like, I don't think it's like a normal Mormon kid experience to go to funerals all the time, but my dad went to funerals all the time, and we were in a small town where like everybody kind of knew each other, in particular, especially my dad knew lots of people, and he'd kind of grown up there. So whenever someone died, we would kind of go we'd go to wedding receptions, we'd go to funerals all the time. So I knew that there was supposed to be a coffin. The person was supposed to be in their temple clothes in the coffin, and that wasn't happening. So I was like, that's a little... I was judgmental there. And then I also even was like, the light was red-toned and sleepy, so it was hard to feel the spirit. So, yeah. Also, in line with this, I was talking about Pastor Kurt Stone, and I was just pointing out in my journal how less than he was than anyone who was like a good Mormon bishop who should be really doing the service, who should be speaking. I pointed out that he was hired, and I said, well, he was really nice, but he didn't have a spirit. He was not called and ordained, and it was all up to him. Like, this guy, he didn't really have the spirit, he didn't have the priesthood power, so he had to use sensationalist, dramatic, emotionally manipulative, like, he had to say stuff that was going to be comforting because the spirit wasn't going to be there. So it was totally up to him as a person to help people feel better and to help them process their grief, and because the spirit wasn't going to do it. And now I'm looking back on that and I'm like, yeah, actually, I can't really recall going to very many LDS funerals and feeling any particular sense of comfort from the words that any of the church's volunteer people say. They're actually not very good at giving good grief counseling, or not. It's not really therapeutic. It's all, the only comfort is kind of the rote repetition of, this is the way that it's done, and look, we all did everything the way that it's supposed to be done, so that's kind of inherently comforting, I guess. Yeah, I wrote down, I guess when you're not called and ordained, it really is you, not the spirit, who comforts others. And now I'm like, yeah, actually, that still checks out, but like, because it's that, it really... it's like, no, it's up to him. Anyway, I feel like I'm not explaining it, but it was interesting to look back on that. And of course, he was just trying to be nice and like talk to the kind of weird sister missionaries or whatever, and he was like really encouraging, and he took the time to talk with us, and of course we wrote this down as a contact for potential, as like, one of our key indicator numbers. We're like, oh, maybe this guy, he was kind of nice, he talked to us. Maybe someday he'll be an investigator. So we wrote it down as one of our numbers to add to the weekly tally. Just shows how transactional and conditional everything was. Then, of course, with the funeral also, I got a chance to talk with the singer, Patty. And it was really cool for me because she was like living the life that I kind of hoped for myself. She even was working with my same voice teacher, which was like, whoa, right? Or she had been. But I was like, oh no, like reading this, I was like, oh no. Like, I think I was a missionary. I was all excited for her to like be excited for me about how I wanted to music. But what she said was, don't do it. She's like, what I'm doing, don't do it. It's not a good idea. She's like, unless you really want to do this, don't specialize it. Like, I can't get a job. I got my master's degree and I still can't get a job. Like, do something else and just do this on the side. But like, get yourself a degree where you could get a job. And it's interesting to me that I wrote down what she said, but then I didn't write down any of my like, so here's what I think about that, or so here's how I feel about that. You know, it's just like, I guess I'll compartmentalize any misgivings I have, or like surprise or frustration or whatever at her actually encouraging me to do something else. Right? Like, isn't that weird? I mean, obviously, I'm not going to write down how I feel about it. That's very in line with my journal habits at this point. And then I wanted to point out that we went to Sister Luck, who is I think we counted her as like an inactive member, like not totally faithful for whatever reason. I don't remember exactly this person, but we keep going by to see her to teach her, and we're counting it as lessons. But we dropped by for surprise lunch because she's always telling us to do that. And turns out that God had inspired us to do this because when we went by, she just had scary news for her cat, and she interpreted us coming then as like answering prayer and helping her not feel alone and helping her know that God is like with her. And we were like, yes, thanks God for telling us to come at this time. But now I can kind of see a little bit of a flaw in that logic, in that connection, because we were gonna go whether or not she had bad news happen at that point, right? Like, I think it's just what we had planned to do. And if you say, well, everything just happens because God planned it, and it like, it's just well, what if we had gone and she just wasn't even home? Or like, you know, it's like the connection between as proof of God. I mean, you know, there's I'm trying to dialogue with the memory of myself being like so sure that this is like proof of God and proof of God's guidance, and it's really hard to argue with this old logic that still lives in my brain, because you just can't argue with it. So I'm going to point out that this really is not necessarily proof, and there were things that we did all the time, and statistically sometimes there's going to be a weird coincidence like this, but there were also plenty of things we did throughout the day that there was no big mystical connection, and now looking back on it, I'm like, I think that's all just kind of up to like luck or chance or whatever. I mean, you can interpret it as you will, but that's how I see it now. So I guess I can see how being so committed to finding God's hand in guiding my life all the time and always looking for that, I can see how it left me really open to manipulation and control, and it kept me so on edge and so worried that I always needed to have God's approval. I was vulnerable to manipulation and group abuse, like control of my life and my schedule, and by getting this occasional intermittent external validation of like, oh yeah, no, God is real, this is the true church, God's guiding my life, this pattern kept me from being able to have the freedom to decide for myself what was most important and like trust myself to make decisions and like to learn and maybe make mistakes. And like I was so caught up in this dance of looking for little miracles, large and small miracles all the time, that I couldn't see that I was better off. I was actually better off trusting myself and just doing what I thought was best and learning from that. Okay. Saturday, May 23rd, 2015, Mission Day 225. We had a pretty awesome district meeting today. My respect for Elder Buell grew even more. Our training was all about adjusting to missionary life, handling stress positively. We had fun role-playing awkward, hard things we have to do as missionaries, like treating a door when the car pulls, tracting a door when the car pulls into the garage. Then we talked about how we're being successful as long as we do what we do. All people have the freedom to choose. And then we practiced a relaxation pose, quite like the ending of a yoga session. I want to call it Shavasana, but I know that I spelled it incorrectly. Anyway, it was great since I haven't even looked at the booklet with Sister Snow yet. And then I made a kind of like oops face. We finished up some of our weekly planning, although we haven't gotten to comp inventory yet. Visited some members and potentials, got in 12-week, and had an awesome discussion and dinner with the Ikedas. Well, we talked with Trent since he's really the one holding back with questions and stuff. He's working on reading the Book of Mormon and all that, and hopefully he'll watch and apply His Grace is Sufficient by Brad Wilcox at BYU Devotional, since it addresses a lot of his concerns about grace and chance and second chances. Yep, they're doing awesome. Smiling face. Then we drove to Spearfish in the rain, and I didn't go slower than the speed limit. There's pop coming out of me, I guess. Smiley face. I think I just want to point out the kind of weird, almost like corporate stuff about the district meeting. So in my mind, there's this, I have a generalization in my mind about working at a like kind of weird corporate job where there's lots of like, they're not actually trying to help employees have better work-life balance, and they're not actually trying to like take care of you. They'll just say like, oh, you should, we're gonna make you work really hard, and you're gonna not maybe get paid enough, and you're not gonna have true like, we're not gonna make actually changes to make your life better. We're just gonna do weird company trainings where we tell you to go home and do yoga and meditate when you're to like get like, we're gonna say you are responsible for making yourself well and getting rid of all the stress that comes from your job, And we're not going to do anything about the bad work conditions that you have, or the stress that we're putting on you, or the pressure we're putting on you. We're just going to tell you, here, you as an individual need to change yourself instead of the system that you're in is unhealthy. No, it's just your problem and your fault as a person that you're stressed. And we're going to give you weird platitudes that are not helpful, but signal that you could be better. And like the connection I'm drawing here is we had these weekly meetings as missionaries where there's the district leader who is always a guy, and they're supposed to give you just trainings every week of how to be better missionaries, which is already like, I'm sure it sucks to be the district leader and have to like pull the stuff out of thin air all the time. I don't know if they like got ideas, but even being the kind of manager in charge is like kind of a position of oppression, even if they're like in power over us, and like, you know, it's all bad, right? But it's just funny. I wrote, we talked about we're successful as long as we do what we do. And I'm like, that's very circular. That doesn't say anything. That feels very corporate platitude. As long as you do what you do, you'll be successful. Like, what? Literally doesn't make sense. There's no argument being made here. And the argument I put to explain that, or I'm like, explanation of this is I say, all people have the freedom to choose. Like, what? Is it blaming us? Like, we have the freedom to choose to be successful because we have the freedom to choose what we do. So if we're not successful, it's our fault because we're just choosing to not be successful. Like, no one's choosing to not be successful. If you're not successful, it's probably because a lot of things going on, including a lot of things outside of your control, and like, yeah, you're gonna have to, like, to the best of your ability, you can do what you can to make your life better, but probably if you're stuck in a bad place, probably something about the situation you're in is also bad, right? Like, that's very blamey. Blaming the individual instead of the system. And just cherry on top, at the end, we practice a relaxation pose, like we're in yoga. And it's just like, it's more of that weird corporate stuff of like, okay, meet with HR and they're gonna tell you to finish your work day with a little stretch or something, which, like, good, yeah, that's good, that's better than not doing that at all. And like, great when you're a missionary and you take a minute to like lay down and maybe feel a little bit of the stress and the emotions in your body, that's good, but like there's no we didn't have permission to incorporate that into a regular day. Even we didn't have permission to like just regularly make this a part of our day because we already were fully booked down to the minute with what we were doing. So even if they're like trying to give us more tools to like deal with our stress, we couldn't even use them. But also, again, just saying, oh, well, just go practice relaxing, like, you silly missionary, stop being so stressed. It's like, it's the problem with missionaries being stressed is not that we aren't taking the time to relax like we should. It's like, we literally are in such a stressful situation that we're going to continue to be stressed even if we also do yoga, because the situation is so unhealthy and so demanding, right? The expectations on the missionaries, the external expectations, and then all of the internal pressure from trying to do all those expectations, and all of the your whole life you've been told and created meaning around what it means to be a missionary and how it's so important. It's the most important years of your life. It's the best 2 years of your life. Everything hinges on this, not only your own salvation, but the salvation of people around you, right? It's like, yeah, yoga's not going to fix that, right? Okay. Sunday, May 24th, 2015, Mission Day 226. So, we forgot to turn the sound on our phones on last night, and thus missed the alarm. I think Sister Snow woke us both up at around 7:52. I was in the middle of a dream about hanging out with a cousin. I think she was freaking out some, my cousin, in my dream, but I wasn't really. I surprised myself. It was raining again. I'm really glad Sister Snow doesn't mind backing in the rain. I suppose it's better than winter, smiley face. So we were in Spearfish for church today, and it was awesome. We were almost late since we ran back to our apartment in between branch council and sacrament meeting to get in a little study. But the spirit was special strong. I enjoyed playing with the parts, aka I enjoyed singing different parts, not playing piano, but singing different parts, not just soprano. I enjoy playing with the parts as we sing, since with Sister Snow, I kind of need to support her on the melody when we sing together in the morning. In our studies, we would sing hymns together. We taught primary. 3 young boys were in the class. We kept the door open. Prayer was the topic of the day. It was really cool to teach them. I guess I'd love being a primary teacher. In the middle of the discussion, one boy said his dad had died the day before. It was hard to help, but I think he understands the principle that he can pray. He'll just have to apply it. We had our commit equals repent lessons with Doug and Marvin today, and it was awesome possum. Marvin's been listening to the scriptures on his phone, and Doug read 1 Nephi 1, so that's good. I'll point out that I'm seeing some of my worries about, or some of my discomfort with being the senior companion, being the trainer, I'm just mentioning I'm really glad Sister Snow is willing to back the car when it's raining, because it was a big struggle for me, an emotional struggle for me to deal with previous companions who wouldn't follow the strict rule of we can never back up the car without someone out watching the back of the car. And I had to be the driver, and I was just, that was the thing that I had learned that I had to kind of be worried about, and I was really glad that she was willing to do it even when it was raining, and just pointed that out. I guess, so here, here's the day with the, content warnings in the description. The mention of death comes up, and I won't give the whole background of this little boy's dad dying. I can just say his parents were no longer together at this point, so obviously it was a complicated thing, and I don't know when he had last seen his dad, and it's a very complicated, messy, sad situation, but it was like it was inappropriate that I was in the position where I was, this kid tells me that his dad died, and I'm trying to teach him about prayer, and I'm an authority figure because I'm a missionary, so I'm only 19, but here I am thinking that it's appropriate for me to try to give this small child comfort and counseling over the death of a parent. Like, if I had been trained about this at all, like, I should have, I think I would have been hopefully trained to, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, like, let's make sure that, like, your parents can get you to a therapist or at least some sort of trained church counselor, right? Like, there's none of that. Like, there are no trained ministers who are, like, trained in grief counseling in the church, at least as far as I'm aware. No one that I ever interacted with. So I was just like, oh, just pray and just pray. Like, clearly I didn't have what it took to help this kid, and it's not my fault that I didn't, but I sure wish that I had at least been given a modicum of the training that most people in my situation in any sort of healthy organization would have been given, would have been given some sort of, like, hey, if someone brings up something big like this, then here's what you can do, right? Here's who you can point them towards. None of that. But also, I want to talk about how death has come up twice in here. We went to a funeral, and here's a little boy whose dad has died, and just it is my personal belief that the LDS Church kind of holds your family hostage and doesn't even, like, allow you the freedom to grieve, because there's this whole thing about, like, well, families are forever as long as you're all, like, good and righteous, and so, like, if you have a family member who dies, like, they're not really gone, so, like, don't be sad, just, like, work harder to make sure you can live with them. And at least the way that I interpreted this kind of teaching when I was in the church, and the way that I see it now, is that people aren't allowed to just accept their present moment feelings of, wow, this person that I love is gone. This is terrible. I feel terrible. I'm very sad. Like, the catharsis of actually feeling your sadness is, like, not allowed. There's this sense that you have to feel God's love, and you have to feel trust in God, and you just, like, if you go to a funeral, people aren't saying, sure, they'll cry and they'll say how much they miss someone, but there's always the, like, we gotta spin, like, the faith and the love and the like, I know I'll see them again, and, like, I because of my belief, like, I know we'll be together again, so they're not really gone, and it's just, like, you never really get to lose, even though they're gone, you don't get to, like, emotionally process and feel that there's always that, like, oh, well, the church says I need to be just fully loving and trusting in God, and, like, I'll probably talk about this in one of the weeks, but I don't like this the theological, emotional world around death in Mormonism. I don't like it. So, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. that's my 34th week as a Mormon sister missionary. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you want to continue following my story. Please take a minute to rate and review this episode, and please share this with anyone you think would be interested. I hope you have a great week, and if you want my advice, just remember that you can love others best when you love yourself first. Bye!